and in this video, I'm going to be going over 8 reasons why you're not losing weight in a calorie deficit. What is going on YouTube? Welcome to the video. If you're new here, welcome. If you are a returning subscriber, welcome back. And in this video, I'm going to be going over 8 reasons why you're not losing weight in a calorie deficit. And the main reason I've made this video is because I constantly get questions about this topic, whether that's on TikTok or Instagram or through emails or even on YouTube. People are constantly swearing up and down that they are in a calorie deficit. They're like, Austin, I am doing every single thing right, but why am I not seeing any type of progress? But lucky for you, I've made this video just for you to help you break down exactly why you are not seeing progress, even though you are swearing that you're being 100% consistent and on point. And now, first off, I do want to address this because a lot of people think that something is probably wrong with their body or a calorie deficit doesn't work, even though millions of professionals have been constantly saying calorie deficit to lose weight, calorie deficit to lose fat, but somehow people think that this isn't working for me, so I must be broken, or this calorie deficit thing is broken, but that is simply not the case. And that's because I do want to make this clear that a calorie deficit is not any sort of special diet or regimen or routine that you are following. A calorie deficit is simply the definition of taking in less calories than your body burns. This is a simple concept called energy balance. And it's basically based on the laws of thermodynamics, where if you are taking in less energy, then your body is going to need energy from somewhere, and it's going to have to pull it from your internal sources like muscle, fat, depending on what your nutrition and training routine looks like. Obviously, you can optimize that, but it's mainly going to boil down to calories in versus calories out. There is no way around this.
In this house, we obey the laws of thermodynamics!
So with that said, the main reason why you aren't losing weight in a calorie deficit is, drumroll please, you're not actually in a calorie deficit. No matter how much you think you are in one, the cold hard truth is that a calorie deficit works 100% of the time, granted you're actually in one. And look, I'm not one of those asshole coaches who throws calorie deficit at everyone's problems or questions, but that's just a simple reality. It really does boil down to energy balance, or calories in, calories out. However, if we dig a little bit deeper, we'll find that the calories in and calories out equation is a little bit more complicated than a lot of people make it out to be. And I'm going to throw up a graphic here that shows a quick breakdown of all of the possible influential factors that can influence your calories in and calories out. As you can see, calories in is pretty simple. It's just the foods you eat. Meanwhile, calories out can be influenced by so many of these factors. Calories out can be influenced by any possible metabolic conditions you have. It can be influenced by body composition, because as we know, lean body mass tends to burn a little bit more energy than fat mass. Your activity levels, if you're someone who sits at a desk all day, if you're someone who just inherently isn't fidgety or moving around a lot, you will tend to burn less calories. Everyone's individual metabolisms are different. We can see this. Calorie calculators aren't perfect. Some people just have slower metabolism. Some people just have inherently faster metabolisms to maintain their current body weight. So that has to be taken into account. And obviously food choices as well. If you eat a very high protein and high fiber diet, of course, this will actually cause your body to burn a little bit more calories through the thermic effect of food. Whereas if you are someone who eats a lot of highly processed foods, your body just doesn't take as much energy to break these foods down. However, with that being said, you don't have to become an expert in nutrition or metabolism just to lose weight and find out the source of why you're not in a calorie deficit. Without further ado, let's dive into possible reason number 1 as to why you're not losing weight in a calorie deficit. And number 1 is going to be not being consistent. And there is a huge reason why I put this as number 1. This is because 9.9 times out of 10, people who swear they are in a calorie deficit actually aren't in a consistent calorie deficit. Whether that means you are sticking to a calorie deficit Monday through Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday rolls around, and you just stop tracking, you stop paying attention to your nutrition, and everything goes off the rails.
Don't crash into the tree.
Or whether you are choosing to track some things and then some things just slip your mind, such as having kids and then you take these lick taste bites, or you are cooking up a new recipe and then you take a few spoonfuls of this and that.
Michael? It is?
Yeah.
They're back? Oh! Damn!
And then 1 or 2 times a day won't matter all that much, but if you do this over the course of the day, this can add up to 5 to 10 times, and then next thing you know, you are hundreds of calories over your deficit, and that actually puts you out of a deficit, which means you are not going to be losing weight. Or whether you are just simply not tracking accurately, you are just eyeballing things, you think you have a handle on this tracking thing, and you don't weigh your food out.
2 shots of vodka.
And I'm going to give it to you straight, you're probably not tracking as accurately as you think you are. Or maybe you are doing everything right, but you're only sticking to your diet for 2 weeks, and then after that, you're like, man, I'm not seeing the results I want, and you give up.
Are we there yet?
No!
Are we there yet?
Yes.
Really? No! Are we there yet?
No!
Are we there yet?
No, we are not!
Are we there yet?
No!
Truth be told, you cannot just stick to something for 2 weeks and expect a ton of results. You're going to have to stick to something for at least a few months or even years in some cases if you want to see results that actually change your life. And the truth is, if you're following a half-assed plan, you're going to see half-assed results.
Never half-ass 2 things. Whole-ass 1 thing.
So if staying consistent sounds like something you are struggling with, then here's what I want you to do. And here's a consistency calendar tool that I first heard about from Jordan Syatt. And the things you'll need are a calendar, a black pen, and a red pen. Here's how it works. For every day that you hit your calories, you hit your protein, and any other nutrition goals you may have set for yourself, and you get a scheduled workout in, you're going to mark that day with a black circle. And obviously, if you don't have a workout scheduled for that day, you can go ahead and still mark it with a black circle anyway because it wasn't planned on that day. And for every other day that you went over or under your nutrition goals and or you missed a workout that was scheduled for that day, you're going to mark that day with a red X. And I want to be clear about this. Even if you just miss one of these things, you're still going to mark it with a red X. And remember, the whole point of this assignment is to make sure you stay consistent and true to your plan. So even if you hit all of your nutrition targets and you missed a workout for that day, that still counts as a red X. Otherwise, you're just going to be giving yourself a little bit of leeway, and the next thing you know, you're going to give yourself a little bit more leeway, and then that defeats the whole purpose of having a consistency calendar. Now, after you do this day after day, at the end of that month, you are going to tally up how many black circles and how many red X's you have. If you are at least 80 to 90% consistent, then congrats, you are nailing it on the consistency end of things, and you might have some other issues that you need to address, so keep watching this video and we will tackle them one by one. Otherwise, if you weren't at least 80 to 90% consistent, then you have some serious self-reflection to do as to why you weren't consistent. In this case, you don't have any right to complain about your lack of results. If you were lacking on the consistency end of things, then you have no reason to complain about your results because you cannot expect A-level results only putting in a C level of effort. Now on to point number 2, not being patient enough. And this point actually kind of goes hand in hand with the previous point because you need to be patient along with being consistent.
Patience, young friend.
And truth be told, here are how most of the conversations I have regarding patience and being in a calorie deficit go. Hey, so I've been dieting and being in a really consistent calorie deficit, but I'm not seeing any progress. What am I doing wrong? Ah, okay, interesting. So how long have you been following this plan for? I've been following this plan for 5 whole days. Wait, 5 days? Yes, it's so frustrating. Ugh. And look, here's the thing that you probably need to be reminded of. Even with consistency, it's still going to take time and you still need to be patient. Oftentimes when you initially start a program, you'll see steady progress chugging along. Then all of a sudden, you'll see progress either slow down or stop before it starts to pick up again. And it's because your progress slows down or stops altogether out of nowhere, even though you are being extremely consistent. And then all of a sudden, your weight just drops one day, having this whoosh effect. And you can see in this graph example with one of my online coaching clients, you'll see that she was making steady progress for about a month until that May 6th point. She just stalled for 2 weeks. Like it randomly, her weight spiked up and it just stalled out until 2 weeks later, it just suddenly dropped back down and she was continuing steady along with her progress. And I really want to make this clear. She was doing everything right. She was hitting her calories, hitting her protein, doing her strength training routines, getting her steps in, but the scale just wouldn't reflect her hard work for some reason. And despite all of that, you can see that she spiked up 5 pounds and it stayed that way for 2 weeks. And the one thing I do totally admire her about this is that she was being fully transparent about how nervous and frustrated she was with the scale. But after a day or two of being anxious and a few back and forth emails to me, she eventually trusted and accepted the process. Lo and behold, 2 weeks later, she kept seeing steady progress and kept chugging along as if nothing ever happened. This is something I see time and time again. A lot of people will see this spike and think, oh shit, I'm not seeing any progress. Maybe I should give up. Maybe I should switch up my program. And this is what kills a lot of people's progress, is because they aren't able to stay patient and consistent through this point. But we can see this time and time again with plenty of people that I worked with. As long as you stay through this sticking point, you will eventually see that drop. So if this is something that you are going through right now, I want you to not stop and stay patient through this sticking point. Because here's the cold hard truth. Things never go exactly according to plan, especially with fat loss. So to reiterate point number 2, be patient because your sign of progress is likely around the corner, so don't give up. Reason number 3, you're doing too damn much. Contrary to point number 1, where we have people who are not consistent enough, we have people who are too consistent. And now after hearing that, you're probably like, Austin, wait, I can be too consistent? And yes, here's what I mean by that. These are people who are already seeing great progress following their routine and plan, but they get down the slippery slope of doing this. Oh wow, I'm seeing really great progress. So that means if I do more of this, then I'll see even more progress and get to my goals even faster. And so these people fall into the trap of thinking that their current plan is working very well, so they think they need to go faster and then see more results, and they start getting addicted to the rate of progress. And then as we know, as we try to do too much too fast, we'll eventually run into burnout. So with these people, they try to do so much, they add so much cardio on top of their routine, they start cutting calories way too much, and they eventually burn out and eat thousands of calories on a random weekend. And while I'm not saying that you're not going to see a lot of progress eating very few calories and doing a ton of activity, this isn't something that is usually sustainable for a lot of people. Because most people don't realize that the hardest part about fat loss is not doing the fat loss process, but what happens after the fat loss process. Because if that fat loss process involves a very strict routine, and then after that, you just go on an all-out binge and eat whatever you want, and you stop doing any sort of activity because you're burnt out, then that fat loss process didn't work. And many people, maybe including yourself, get stuck in this process for years. A lot of people sprint and rush down this fat loss process, so they will see a lot of progress going down, but then this leads them to burnout, and then they just rebound on the way back up. And a lot of people get stuck in this up and down cycle for years, something called yo-yo dieting, where they go up and down like a yo-yo, but not see any steady and slow, consistent progress. So instead of not doing enough or doing too much, strive for somewhere in the middle, a moderate approach. Number 4, you're simply not doing enough. We have one end of the spectrum where people are doing too much. Now we have the people who aren't doing enough. These are going to be the people who constantly complain about not seeing progress, yet when you ask them about their habits and routines, they'll say things like, wow, my Apple Watch says I burnt over 1,000 calories. Guess I get to treat myself. I don't need to weigh my food. I've got this down. That looks like it's about a cup. It's good. I'll just have a few chips and not track it. It's really not that much. Ooh, Little Jimmy's chicken nuggets are looking very good. I'll sneak a few bites. No one will know. Actually, I will know. I'm watching you. Anyways, the list goes on, but you get the point. These people are usually overestimating how many calories they burn or underestimating how many calories they've eaten, or like most people, a combination of both. And what does this all lead to? They self-sabotage their efforts to be in a calorie deficit. And as we know, no calorie deficit equals no weight loss. So here are things you can do to keep yourself in check to know whether you're actually getting into a calorie deficit or not. If you're eating your calories burned back, stop doing that. There is no fitness tracker out there that is going to be 100% accurate. And a common question I get about this is, well, how do I track my calories burned? And the simple answer is you don't. Just focus on how many calories you're eating and adjust depending on how your body responds from there. And besides, why would you make it more complicated for yourself? If you already have trouble keeping track of your calories burned, why would you add another variable in there to keep track of, like calories burned? Second thing to look out for here is making sure that you're actually weighing and measuring your food accurately and not just eyeballing it. Weighing your food in grams is going to be the most accurate way to measure your food. Because if you think about it, 50 grams is always going to be 50 grams regardless of what type of container you put it in. Thirdly here, not tracking licks, tastes, bites, or anything of that nature. Sure, it's okay to sneak a few Costco samples here and there every week you go grocery shopping, but if you're doing this several times a day, whether you're snacking off of your kid's plate, taking a few sample licks and tastes when you are cooking up new recipes, this can seriously add up, especially if you are cooking calorie-dense meals. But keep in mind, these things still do count and they add up quick. Fourthly, are you being a weekend warrior? This means that you stay consistent all week, and then as soon as the weekend rolls around, you don't give tracking a single care in the world, and your activity routine goes out the window. And for a lot of people, this can be thousands of calories that go unaccounted for and put you out of that calorie deficit that you've worked so hard to put into place throughout the week. Lastly, maybe you struggle with the all or nothing mentality. Whether that's going off track for one meal, eating something that you thought you weren't supposed to eat, or eating a bit more than usual, and you use that as an excuse to say, well, I messed up today, might as well keep messing up because it's all over. So this leads you down a slippery slope of just continuing to make bad decision after bad decision, whereas you could simply just stop and make that next good decision and keep your progress on track. Number 5 on the list is going to be you're building muscle while you're losing fat. And here's the thing, most people, when they try to lose fat or lose weight, they get tied up on the scale weight or the number on the scale. And here's the thing, you want to lose fat, not just simply lose weight. Because I can guarantee every single person on this planet is not saying, I want to lose muscle, I want to lose water weight, I want to lose bone density. Everyone, when they say they want to lose weight, they want to lose fat weight. And when people embark on this journey, they get caught up on that scale number and thinking that only when that scale number goes down am I losing fat. And often we forget that when you step on the scale, it doesn't just measure your fat mass, it measures everything in your body, including the fat, including the muscle, including the water weight. So while yes, the scale can be a useful tool to measure progress, it's not the only tool you should be using, and you sure as hell should not be getting caught up with what the number says on the scale every single day, whether it spikes up or spikes down. And here's the truth, you can make a ton of progress while not seeing the scale weight change much at all. And this is going to be due to something called body recomposition. This is when you are building muscle and losing fat at the same time. Because think about what the scale weight measures. It measures everything in your body. So as you lose fat and as you're staying consistent in your calorie deficit, but let's say you also start strength training, so you start gaining some of that muscle mass back. So in the end, everything summed up together, your weight is still gonna stay the same, or it looks like you might not have lost that much weight, when in reality, you might be making a ton of progress. So instead of just solely relying on the scale weight, here's what I want you to do as other forms of measuring progress. Taking body measurements twice a week, I recommend taking one around your stomach, one around your thigh, and one around your hips. Make sure to take this measurement in the same place every 2 weeks. And I really want to make this point clear and drive this point home. If you are seeing your measurements go down, but your scale weight is staying the same, you are making progress. Another form is going to be taking progress pictures, and I recommend taking progress pictures every 4 weeks. And this can be especially useful because oftentimes we don't see the amount of visual progress that we make because we just simply see ourselves in the mirror every day. But if we take these progress pictures weeks apart, we are going to see these day and night changes as we're making progress. And while I know it can feel extremely awkward to take those beginning or before pictures, know that once you start making progress, you are going to regret not taking them. Another form of progress is if you are getting stronger in the gym or during your workouts over time. Getting stronger is one of the most reliable measures of building muscle. So if you are seeing your measurements drop, and you're getting stronger in the gym, then you are losing fat and building muscle at the same time, and don't stop, no matter what the scale says. And then a few more honorable mentions for measuring progress that have nothing to do with the scale weight is feeling like you have increased energy or mood, feeling like your clothes fit a little bit differently. And the last one here is gonna be extremely underrated, but that's making mental progress. This can include making better food choices, being more consistent than you have before, feeling more confidence at the gym or during your workouts, becoming more efficient at tracking food, saying no to the unnecessary snacks, sweets, treats, rather than giving in constantly like you did before, or even saying yes to the snacks, sweets, treats, etc., rather than overly restricting yourself than you have in the past. Reason number 6, you don't really have that much muscle mass. This is a mistake I see time and time again. Obviously, it's pretty reasonable that people think that they should get into a calorie deficit and lose fat if they want to lose weight. However, another part of the puzzle is building muscle. And oftentimes people with slower metabolisms find that they have to diet on 1,000 or around 1,500 calories. And unless you're a very small or petite person, it can be very difficult to eat that few number of calories. And the truth is, for some people, if you want to lose weight to get a lean and defined physique, then you need to build muscle rather than trying to lose weight and lose fat. And this is something that I have gone through myself too, as we can see in these pictures here. During this time, I thought that by strictly dieting or being in a deficit that I would somehow achieve this lean physique that I really wanted. My dieting plan involved eating very few calories. I think at the time I was eating like 12 or 1,300 calories, which was obviously very little for someone of that stature. Also, I didn't really have a good training plan, so my strength just literally dropped. And also my nutrition approach wasn't the best either, so that didn't facilitate muscle retention, which obviously caused my maintenance calories to drop even further, and I thought I would just have to diet even harder to get the physique that I wanted. However, now looking back, here are some things that I would change. If I had spent more time focusing on eating at maintenance or a calorie surplus and focused on building more muscle, I would have actually increased my lean body mass compared to my fat mass. So in turn, you can actually decrease your body fat percentage by not having to be in a calorie deficit. And when you do this, you actually increase your muscle size and definition that you're after, and you actually start getting the physique that you want. Rather than becoming this thin and frail version of yourself that you're not really after, you probably want a lean and toned defined physique. Increasing your muscle mass also boosts your metabolism so that you can have a higher calorie intake. And this can actually set yourself up to have a better dieting phase or a better calorie deficit phase later in the future. Because as you start to build your maintenance and metabolism up, maybe next time around when you do want to lose fat, you don't have to diet on 1,000 or 1,500 or an extremely low number of calories. So if you're someone who finds that you've been constantly trying to diet and trying to lose those last 10 pounds, then I want you to stop trying to diet, stop trying to be in a calorie deficit, and actually focus on eating more and maximizing building muscle. Reason number 7 is that you keep yo-yoing or yo-yo dieting. As mentioned before, yo-yo dieting is when you go on a severely restrictive diet and you drop down and see a ton of progress at first, but that severe restriction just leads you to rebounding back up, and you end up eating a ton of food and giving up in your routine, and you spike back up, and then you feel bad about that, and then you severely restrict again, you go back down, and then you give up again, and you spike back up, and you constantly go into this yo-yo dieting phase. And here are just a few symptoms of constantly yo-yo dieting. When you constantly yo-yo diet, you increase your chances of losing muscle. And as we said, muscle is a very important tissue to maintain your metabolism and get you the lean, toned, and defined physique that you're after. So if you're constantly trying to be in a calorie deficit and diet to get the physique that you're after, this is like constantly trying to step on the gas while your tank is empty. Symptom number 2 is forming a poor relationship with food. And as we've heard time and time again from Newton's third law, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So when you severely restrict yourself and go on these super deep dieting phases, the deeper you try to diet, you're going to have an equal and opposite reaction of rebounding straight back up. And what most likely happens when you severely restrict yourself, you're going to have a huge rebound, and then you start to binge on all the things that you restricted yourself from. And then what happens when you rebound that high? You feel guilty about yourself and you start to severely restrict yourself again. And so every time you do this, you're just going up and down in very severely over restrictive or under restrictive cycles. So rather than trying to take 10 steps up at a time and then you fall on your ass and you end up 20 steps below, start taking one step at a time. Because here's the reality: if that severely restrictive approach worked, it would have worked by now. So take the slow and steady approach, implement point number 2, and be patient. Now on to reason number 8, our last reason, and there is a huge reason why I saved this for last, because this only applies to a smaller percentage of the population. And this is if you have a medical condition. Really, this should be something that you really look into only if you have addressed all of these other previous points. Because truthfully, there are certain conditions that can affect your metabolism and not cause you to lose weight as easily. But the fact still remains, even with these conditions, you can still get into a calorie deficit. But for people with these conditions, it will make it a lot harder to stay or get into a calorie deficit. And these can be conditions like hypothyroidism, PCOS, insulin resistance, menopause, and the sort. And if you are someone who has tried all of these previous 7 points and have still found no success or no progress, then I highly encourage you to see your primary care doctor and get to the bottom of it. Because sometimes there might be medical interventions to help you, sometimes there aren't. But the most important thing I want you to realize is that even if there aren't medical solutions to this, know that it is still not hopeless. Rather than focusing on the things you can't control, focus on the things you can control. Because like I said, regardless of all this other stuff, it still does boil down to calories in, calories out, even with people with medical conditions.
In this house, we obey the laws of thermodynamics!
It's just that, like I said, the calories out part of the equation is influenced by so many factors, especially if you have a medical condition, this can affect one of those many factors. But the thing I want you to realize the most is that there are plenty of things well within your control, because any progress at all is still progress nonetheless. And that about covers everything I wanted to cover, and I just wanted to go over this quick recap because this is probably going to be a long video. So the bottom line is that I want you to take away from this video is that no matter how much you think you're in a deficit, if you're not seeing any measurable progress, you are definitely not in a calorie deficit.
In this house, we obey the laws of thermodynamics!
And with reason number 1 being the most common, you're not being as consistent as you think you are. Hold yourself accountable and track your consistency like I said in this video. Number 2 is not being patient enough. Because you can be doing every single thing right, but if you're not being patient enough, you're not going to give your body the time it needs to show you that progress. So stop wanting everything yesterday and be freaking patient. Number 3, you're doing too damn much. The quicker you try to rush that process, the quicker you might reach burnout and lose all that progress. Number 4, on the other hand, you're probably not doing enough. The results you get are a direct reflection of how much effort you're putting in. A half-assed approach is going to lead to half-assed results. Number 5, you're probably building muscle. Remember that muscle has weight and fat also has weight. So when you're building muscle and losing fat at the same time, this doesn't directly reflect on the scale, but it can reflect on other forms of progress like taking measurements, taking progress pictures, or strength levels. Number 6, on the other hand, you're not paying attention to building any muscle. When you go on these severely restrictive diets, you risk your chance of losing muscle. And when you lose muscle, your metabolism goes down, you don't get the lean, toned physique that you want, and this ultimately sets you up for even a harder fat loss process. So if you're someone who constantly struggles to stay in a deficit or constantly struggles to lose that last bit of fat, then I want you to stop trying to lose weight or lose fat and focus on building muscle. Number 7, you keep yo-yoing. Remember, it's not about trying to get to point A to point B as fast as possible, because the faster you try to rush this, you might not reach that point at all. Getting from point A to point B and staying there is much more important than getting from point A to point B in a matter of 2 to 3 weeks. Lastly, number 8, you might have a medical condition. This applies to a smaller percentage of the population, but if this is something that is seriously on top of your mind, especially after having addressed all of these previous points in your journey, then I want you to seek out your primary care physician and address it from there. Otherwise, know that it is not hopeless and that there are still options. Focus on what you can control rather than what you can't control. But other than that, that about wraps up this video. This is going to be a long one just from the recording timer, but thank you so much for watching and making it through this. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more, and I will catch you in the next one.